Dawn is breaking.
The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion is a massive and expansive game taking place in Cyrodiil and the heart of the Empire that completely covers Tamriel. At the center of it all is the Oblivion Crisis. The main character is practically willed into existence by Uriel Septim VII to help fight the Daedra and find Martin Septim. The movement that is the catalyst for the Oblivion Crisis is the Mythic Dawn cult, a cult of religious fanatics who use violence to bring the Daedra Lord Mehrunes Dagon to Tamriel. The leader and prophet of this cult is Mankar Camoran. Mankar was chosen by Mehrunes Dagon and given the Mysterium Xarxes, a Daedric artifact that is written in Daedric runes. From the Mysterium Xarxes, Mankar Camoran writes the 4 volumes of the commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes. A very inventive name. The commentaries are used as the cult's recruitment tool, but also collecting all 4 volumes of the commentaries is the first step in getting initiated into the cult. In this video, I want to take a deep dive into the religion of the Mythic Dawn to see if it's just a fanatical cult with bloodthirsty intentions to bring the Daedric god of destruction, revolution, and ambition to the mortal plane of Tamriel, or if there's any values in the religion that have merits. I also want to reflect on how successful the religion was. If it did succeed in some sense by bringing Mehrunes Dagon to the mortal realm, even though it was for just a short period of time, he was then quickly banished back to Oblivion by Akatosh. Did the Mythic Dawn have a large impact on Tamriel, or are they just a footnote in the history where they came close to realizing their vision but ultimately failed? Before diving down the rabbit hole of the Mythic Dawn cult, it would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way to help make more of these videos. Thank you. The philosophies and tenets of the Mythic Dawn lies at the feet of Mankar Camoran and his commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes. Mankar is not only the storyteller of this religion. All religions are trying to tell a story to frame the world how they see it and direct its followers in how to act in it. But Mankar is a holy and supernatural figure in the religion who plays a role in the divinity of the religion. Since being supernatural isn't anything special in Elder Scrolls, we can really only look to the philosophies and opinions of Mankar to see if the Mythic Dawn cult is sound or not. In the commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes, the carrot that is being dangled for the reader is the promise of power beyond the reader's imagination. But if the reader wants to take part in Mehrunes Dagon's power, the reader must collect 4 keys. The 4 keys of Mehrunes Dagon is a mix of characteristics, certain levels of consciousness, and secret knowledge that will allow the reader to enter paradise. Enter as Lord Dagon has written. Come slow and bring 4 keys. Our order is based on the principles of his mighty razor Novitiate, questing knight, chaplain, and master. Let the evil ones burn in its light as it by the excess of our vision. Then shalt our knowledge go aright. However, recall that your sight is yet narrow, and while you have the invitation, you have not the address. So, what is the first key of Lord Dagon? In the first volume of the commentaries, we are given a veiled idea of what the first key is. Reader, this is your door to that Demense, and though you be a destroyer, you must still submit to locks. Lord Dagon would only have those clever enough to pause, all else the Arubis claims in their fool running. Walk first, heed. The impatience you feel is your first slave to behead. Mankar is telling us that the first key to enlightenment is patience and caution, that we will not get there instantly. Actually, not bad advice. Understanding delayed gratification is important. Welcome, Novitiate. That you are here at all means you have the worthiness of kings. Seek thy pocket now, and look. There's the first key glinting with the light of a new dawn. Just by taking interest in patiently reading the commentaries, we have our first key. This reminds me of a boss I once had who always said just showing up on time is half the battle. So nothing crazy, just some general good advice. The second key is a little more vague, but we can figure it out from looking at the commentaries volume 2. Lord Dagon wishes you no ills, but the momentous, and as he wants, you must want. And so learn from the pages of God this, the virtue of want. Now this is something more unique to the Mythic Dawn, taking pride in desire, specifically the desires of Mehrunes Dagon, being the Prince of Destruction and Revolution, it makes sense that desire would be an important characteristic you would need, that strong desire to change the world. The third key is where we really start to get into the meat of the Mythic Dawn, specifically the cosmology of the Elder Scrolls, transcending the lines between mortal and gods. This is the third key of New Mantia, and the secret of how mortals become makers and makers back to mortals. Bones of the Weald need their flesh, and that is mankind's heirloom. Volume 3 goes on to say how Aedra, the gods of the Elder Scrolls, have led people astray from realizing their divine potential. Mankar then references a spiritual enlightenment that is referenced in previous games, Chim. Chim, those who know it, can reshape the land, witness the home of the Red King once jungled. Chim is such a large concept that it could probably be its own video, but to put it quickly, Chim is a knowledge and state of enlightenment that allows the individual the ability to transcend the reality of the world. Vivek from Morrowind is able to achieve Chim and able to make himself a god. Mankar is referencing that Tiber Septim also achieved Chim and was able to change the jungles of Cyrodiil into the calm plains and forests we see in the game. Mankar achieving Chim explains a lot, the inconsistencies around who he is, a high elf or Altmer, even though he was born to Bosmer or Wood Elf parents. Mankar was also probably able to give himself the blood of a dragon so he would be able to wear the Amulet of Kings. It also gives credence to the theory that Tiber Septim just achieved Chim rather than naturally be a Dragonborn. Dragonborn don't become gods when they die, whereas achieving Chim is loosely considered godhood, which would explain why after Tiber Septim's death he became Talos, the ninth Aedra. And I have to say, I have a feeling that that Mankar has not achieved true Chim. I think Mankar has achieved a lesser form of Chim via Mehrunes Dagon's power, which is why Mankar is far from a god, and why he is really only given reality-bending powers in Oblivion in his Mankar Camoran's Paradise, which is probably under Mehrunes Dagon's plane of Oblivion. Martin even states that Mankar's Paradise is the Mysterium Xarxes, so Mankar's Chim and power purely run through his relationship with Mehrunes Dagon. The commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes is basically a retelling of a conversation between Mankar and Dagon through the Mysterium Xarxes. While Mankar believes what Dagon tells him to be true, I think we should be far more skeptical. Now, as far as religions go, this is a little bit of a left turn. If you're going to create a path of enlightenment for the devotees of your religion, this might be a little difficult. Oh yeah, become part of the Mythic Dawn. You just need to be patient, have desire, and achieve a pseudo-godhood that only a handful of others in all of history have achieved. I don't think I would call that a nice on-ramp. I would call that sort of a difficult curve to follow. The fourth commentaries and the fourth key to Mehrunes Dagon is basically a massive lore dump describing the cosmology of Mundus, Nirn, and Oblivion. The first being that Mundus was once ruled by Dru kings, Dru being the strange aquatic beastmen that live in the ocean. Not 100% sure why this is relevant, except that Mehrunes Dagon eventually, I think, destroys them all. But basically, the world was once ruled by Cthulhu-esque creatures. Mankar then reveals who is Mehrunes Dagon and his purpose in Oblivion, and on Mundus. The Magna Gi were the creators of Mehrunes Dagon, and they created him in the bowels of a place called Lig. I give my soul to the Magna Gi, saith the joyous in paradise, for they created Mehrunes the Razor in secret, in the very bowels of Lig, the domain of the upstart who vanishes. Though they come from diverse waters, each get shared sole purpose, to artifice a prince of good, spinning his likeness in random swath, and imbuing him with Oblivion's most precious and scarce asset, hope. For casual players of the game, you're probably asking, what the fuck? Who are the Magna Gi? What is Lig? And this doesn't sound like the Mehrunes Dagon that we know. And who is the upstart who vanishes? We'll need to take a deep dive into the cosmology of Elder Scrolls. And this could also be its own separate video, so we'll paraphrase a little bit. We'll start with the upstart who vanishes, which, according to the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, is Lorkhan, who is the deity who tricked/convinced the Aedra and the Magnus and the Magna Gi to create Mundus. Once Magnus and the Magna Gi realized that Mundus was a trick, they escaped Mundus, and their escape is what created the sun for Magnus and the stars for the Magna Gi to form. So Magnus and the Magna Gi see Mundus as something that is incomplete or improper. So the Magna Gi create Mehrunes Dagon because they hope through his destruction and revolution they can fix Mundus and Nirn to be the way it is supposed to be according to their vision. Lig, though, and why Mehrunes Dagon sounds so different on it, is less concrete and more nebulous. The only tidbit we know of Lig is from the author of Oblivion's story, Michael Kirkbride, who did a Reddit AMA all the way back in 2013. A Redditor asked Kirkbride what Lig is. Unfortunately, Kirkbride doesn't give a direct answer. Lig is one of the adjacent places. It's still there. I wouldn't call it a different Kalpa so much as a parallel version of Tamriel. Now, I have no concrete evidence for what I think Lig is and why Dagon is so different in it, but my theory is that Lig is possibly a bizarro version of Tamriel, where up is left, yellow is purple, and things like that, and that's why Dagon is a good Daedra filled with hope there. This also could just be the opinions of the Magna Gi and Mankar Camoran. We see Dagon as the Daedric Prince of Destruction and Revolution. The Magna Gi see this as a good and full of hope because the promise he represents that he will change Tamriel and Mundus to what Magnus and the Magna Gi want it to be. So it is with this fourth key that we learn that the world is broken and wrong, and the Magna Gi want to fix it with Lord Dagon by having demons from the plane of Oblivion kill everyone. Now we can become full members of the Mythic Dawn and enter Mankar's paradise inside the Mysterium Xarxes. We now understand why the Mythic Dawn are called that. They wish to take Tamriel back to the Mythic Age for it to be recreated in the proper vision of the Magna Gi, through Mehrunes Dagon's destruction, revolution, and change. This is why Dagon's image is similar to Shiva from Hinduism. Shiva, the destroyer, brings about the apocalypse so that the world will be reborn anew. Now that we have the four keys and understand the Mysterium Xarxes, we have one final lore dump from Mankar Camoran. It is when we enter Mankar's paradise to defeat him, to retrieve the Amulet of Kings.
How little you understand. You cannot stop Lord Dagon. The principalities have sparkled as gems in the black reaches of oblivion since the first morning. Many are their names and the names of their masters. The cold harbor of Meridia, Periite's quagmire, the 10 moon shadows of Mephala, and Dawn's beauty, the princedom of Lorkon, misnamed Tamriel by deluded mortals. Yes, you understand now. Tamriel is just one more Daedric realm of oblivion, long since lost to its prince when he was betrayed by those that served him. Lord Dagon cannot invade Tamriel, his birthright. He comes to liberate the occupied lands. Ask yourself, how is it that mighty gods die, yet the Daedra stand incorruptible? How is it that the Daedra forthrightly proclaim themselves to man, while the gods cower behind statues and the faithless words of traitor priests? It is simple. They are not gods at all. The truth has been in front of you since you first were born. The Daedra are the true gods of this universe. Julianos, Dibella, and Stondar are all Lorcan's betrayers, posing as divinities in the principality that has lost its guiding light. What are scholarship, love, and mercy when compared to fate, night, and destruction? The gods you worship are trifling shadows of first causes. They have tricked you for ages. Why do you think your world has always been contested ground, the arena of powers and immortals? It is Tamriel, the realm of change, brother to madness, sister to deceit. Your false gods could not entirely rewrite history. Thus you remember tales of Lorcan vilified, a dead trickster whose heart came to Tamriel. But if a god can die, how does his heart survive? He is Daedroth! Tamriel I Daedroth! This heart is the heart of the world, for one was made to satisfy the other. You all remember this. It is in every legend. Daedra cannot die, so your so-called gods cannot erase him from your minds completely.
Mankar asserts that Lorcan is a Daedra and Tamriel is a forgotten Daedra realm that needs to be reclaimed. And after all this lore and cosmology theory, I think this is the straw that finally breaks the camel's back. The concepts of the Aedra, those who helped create Tamriel, and the Daedra, those who chose not to help create Tamriel, without the otherness of Tamriel, the definition of Daedra and Oblivion somewhat fall apart. I think this stems from Mankar not actually achieving true Chim. Mankar is a god in Mehrunes Dagon's plane of Oblivion and no more. So, for the plan to succeed, Mankar has to convince himself that Tamriel is of similar properties to Oblivion so he and Dagon can take control of it. This is where the prophecy of the Mythic Dawn falls apart. With Mankar's death in his own paradise and Dagon's banishment by Akatosh, we find out that Tamriel isn't just a plane of Oblivion, but a true mortal realm with a hard reality that can't be so easily bent as an Oblivion plane. Tamriel's purpose, just like Lorcan, is far more mysterious than the playgrounds of the Daedra Lords. While Mehrunes Dagon and the Mythic Dawn literally failed in their mission, in many ways the Oblivion Crisis was a catalyst for permanent change and revolution in Tamriel. Comparing the normal people of Cyrodiil to the Mythic Dawn make them feel like silly cartoon characters living in sort of a perfectly quaint world. And that's totally what they are, and the Mythic Dawn sort of shake them out of it, basically. The crisis ended the Septum line and the definitive knowledge of a divine emperor, which leads to the Aldemari Dominion rebelling against the Mede dynasty and a fractured Tamriel full of war and strife, which leads to the Dragonborn crisis of Skyrim. The Oblivion Crisis was the period to the Civil War era and marked the beginning of a more brutal and chaotic period that hopefully we'll see continue in Elder Scrolls 6. So in a way the Mythic Dawn were successful. They brought a revolution and destruction to Tamriel not seen before. The primal force of Mehrunes Dagon was enacted. And maybe that's all Dagon wanted, and Dagon just was spinning the needed yarn for Mankar Camoran to create the conditions needed for all of this to occur. As for the religion of the Mythic Dawn, the tenets are rather shallow and vain, obviously caring more about desire and ambition and wanting to get revenge and destruction, and sort of seeing themselves as Daedra, which seems a little diminishing. But this is all pretty consistent with a Daedric religion, but the monkey paw always seems to curl when dealing with them. For me, Chim seems to be much more of an interesting path to follow. So in a certain sense, the way that Mankar Camoran used his followers as pawns, Mehrunes Dagon did succeed in some sense by using Mankar Camoran as a pawn. I guess you could also say the Magna Gi are also using Mehrunes Dagon as a pawn. It's just sort of a Russian doll situation of pawns, basically. Oblivion was one of the first games I played on the Xbox 360 as a kid, and I have to be honest, I had no idea it was as deep and as rich of a story as I played as a kid. Like, really going in and reading all of the commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes really opens up a whole new world of interesting story and lore that I wasn't expecting. And also, the beauty of Elder Scrolls, I think, is a little bit of the fact that you don't have to read it. And like me as a dumb kid who just played the games and just enjoyed it for that and didn't care about the lore, that's totally fine as well. And it's sort of the depth of the game is really where it really shines. Also, just the characters being just the silliest things possible is also really funny to me. It'll be interesting to see how this sort of antagonism that we're sort of being hinted at between the Magna Gi and the mortal world fully plays out. It'll be interesting to see if any of that's addressed in Elder Scrolls 6. I don't think it's really addressed too much in Elder Scrolls 5 in Skyrim, but maybe there's a lore deep dive somewhere that can help us learn that as well, and maybe I'll do a video on that someday. Well, thanks for listening to my analysis and deep dive into the Mythic Dawn cult and the 4 keys of Mehrunes Dagon, and as well as Mankar Camoran. It would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel, and if you wouldn't mind, consider supporting me on Patreon. It goes a long way to helping me make more of these videos. Thank you.